How's it going? Thanks for tuning in. If you're watching this video, you're probably a contractor, maybe here in Michigan, looking into your liability insurance. My name's Brian. I'm an independent insurance agent based here in Michigan. I work with a lot of contractors, a lot of businesses on their commercial insurance programs, whether it's their general liability, workers' compensation, commercial auto, umbrella insurance, commercial property, and then also on the personal side, I also help individuals, families with their home and auto insurance. Today, I want to talk about liability insurance specifically for contractors, and people that might be looking to save money, whether you're just starting out or maybe you have been in operation for a while and you just got your renewal and you're thinking to yourself, why am I paying this much for liability insurance? What other options are out there? What's my agent doing? You just have questions in general. So today, that's what this video is about. So first, to start, liability insurance on the contractor side, you're typically going to be referring to general liability insurance. Now, what does this policy actually cover? It's going to cover a few main things that I want to go over: bodily injury, property damage liability, and then products and completed operations. So if your work, your operations ever injures a third party, this is where this coverage would step in. If your work or operations, if any of your completed work causes property damage, this is where this coverage would step in. So it would help with the medical expenses, the legal fees, everything of that nature related to that type of claim. You know, if you are a plumbing contractor and you're doing installation work or service work at a property and you flood the house and there's water damage, this is where this policy would step in and help with those repair costs. Okay, and then now the reason you might be required to carry liability insurance. If you are working with general contractors, almost all the time they're going to have some form of subcontractor agreement in place. And a lot of times there's going to be a liability insurance requirement component in those contracts. They do this to reduce their own risk exposure and then also at the same time protect you, because if your business is operating and you don't have this liability insurance and there's a claim, all of that would fall back on you personally, and you wouldn't have an insurance company there to help pay for those claims. So that's the reason they require it. Now, as far as what actually drives the cost for liability insurance, it's going to be based on a few factors. Number one is going to be the actual type of work you're doing. Every insurance company out there is going to have a class code associated with your work. So if you are doing residential carpentry work, there's a class code associated with that. If you're doing commercial roofing, there's a class code associated with that. HVAC work, whatever it is, every insurance company has a class code, and then every insurance company will have a rate for that class code. And then this rate is going to act as, the multiplier. And then what is it multiplied by? The payroll. So it's very important that you do have an accurate payroll amount, because in general liability policies, very similar to workers' comp, they are going to be subject to an audit at the end of the policy term. So as you're going through things, again, if you've been in business for a while, you're probably used to a general liability insurance audit. But if you're just starting out, try to get these numbers as accurate as possible so that you do not get hit with a big bill at the audit. Now, the second component to all this is going to be your total cost of subcontracted work. So if you sub out a lot of work, there's a different class code associated with that versus actual work that you might be doing on your payroll, right? So you could have a total cost, or you could have a subcontractor code on there, total cost of subcontracted work, and then a code for HVAC work, carpentry, whatever it is. And then the total cost of that work throughout the year, they're going to have a rate and a class code associated with that, each insurance company, and then that's how it's going to be determined. Those two factors, your total cost of subcontracted work and your payroll, are what is going to determine your premium. And then obviously the type of work you're doing. There are other factors as well. If you've been in business for a while and you've had claims, that can impact your premium as well. So just something to note. But if you're just starting out or just in general, those are really going to be the two main factors. Now, again, I do want to remind you, this policy is subject to an audit. If you do have a lot of subcontracted work, make sure that you do require that your subcontractors have their own insurance, right? This should be standard business practice, as well as having formal subcontractor agreements that you're having in place with each of them. Because if not, this can fall back on you, and you can get, again, this can impact your premium as well if you're not working with insured subcontractors. So just something I want to note as well. Now, the cost range for this, it can vary a ton depending on the type of work you're doing, depending on how long you've been in business. If you are a one-man, residential remodeling operation, the cost for the coverage might only be $1,000 a year. Pretty inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. Could even be less, depending on, again, the type of work you're doing, if you're doing commercial versus residential. But then as you get to larger scale commercial operations, if you're working with, if you're a commercial general contractor doing large projects, these policies can be tens of thousands of dollars a year, if not more. So there's a huge range of cost when it comes to this. How to actually get the cheapest rate? Work with somebody who has access to multiple insurance companies that are very good for contractors. And not every insurance company is going to be good for certain contractors. So again, those larger scale commercial operations, you're probably going to be looking at larger insurance companies like Travelers, companies like Chubb, Zurich. These are companies that are used to underwriting. Excuse me. These are companies that are used to underwriting. Liberty Mutual, maybe. They're used to underwriting larger scale construction operations. They're national insurance carriers. So if you are working across the country and you're subbing out work across multiple projects, these are going to be much better fits typically than regional carriers. Now, that's not to say that regional carriers can't be super competitive, especially if you are here in Michigan. Auto Owners, Frankenmuth, Cincinnati, these can be great options as well. You want to work with an agent who has access to multiple companies that are very good with contractors. That's how you're going to get the lowest rate. And you really want to work with somebody who's used to the space, because they have better relationships with their underwriters. They can get better pricing, and they know who to go to for specific classes of business within the contracting space. So that's very important to note. Now, some of the bigger mistakes that I see when it comes to trying to get the cheapest policy. One is they have their exposures wrong, right? Somebody might, excuse me, somebody might lowball the payroll amount, the payroll estimates for your operation. They might lowball the subcontractor costs. This will obviously impact your rate. So make sure that those are lined up. And then also the class codes. Make sure that they are working with the underwriter to have the proper class codes in place. That's going to be the biggest mistake, because if you have the wrong class code, sometimes certain work might be excluded, right? If you are doing a lot of commercial work or a lot of residential work, vice versa, make sure that the class code reflects that, because sometimes there are exclusions. If you are a commercial contractor and you do some residential work, there could be exclusions in your policy for that. So make sure that these things are taken into account, and just don't go with the cheapest option. Make sure that you do understand what you're actually purchasing. So overall, that's kind of the basics around liability insurance, the cost of it for contractors, for construction businesses. If you are looking for help, either getting a policy in place initially or to review what you have, your renewal, whatever it may be, feel free to reach out. I would love the opportunity to work with you and see if our team can help. If you have any other questions about commercial insurance, liability specifically, commercial auto, workers' comp, whatever it is, feel free to reach out. I would love the opportunity to help, or leave them in the comments below. And if you like the video, I would appreciate a like, comment, subscribe, whatever it is. Thanks for tuning in, and look forward to seeing if I can help. Thanks a lot.